everyone. My name's Anna Palmer. I'm the CEO and one of the founders of Punchbowl News. We are thrilled to have all of you joining us in person and on the live stream for a pop-up conversation with Senator John Thune, the Republican from South Dakota. He's also the Senate Minority Whip and also serves as ranking member of the Telecom Subcommittee in the Senate, which is great because we're going to be talking news of the day as well as 5G and Spectrum. A big thank you to Verizon for making this conversation possible. This morning, after our conversation with Senator Thune, I'm going to be joined by Verizon CEO Hans Vestberg, as well as Tom Brady, seven-time world champion, entrepreneur, and philanthropist, to talk for a fireside chat. As always, you can find Punchbowl News on all social media channels at Punchbowl News. We encourage you to share about this conversation. And with that, I'm going to welcome the senator to the stage. Hello.
Great to see you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Here or here?
Here, we'll go right in the middle.
All right, very good. Thank you. Okay.
Right in the hot seat, you know? All right, so as you know, we've done these before. We always start with a little news of the day before we get to the topic.
Right.
Tomorrow, the Senate is going to vote on the bipartisan border security bill. Democrats clearly trying to make this an issue going into the 2024 election. Do you think this is going to be a problem for Republicans since you had the deal and then former President Donald Trump basically said, you know, don't move this forward?
I don't. I think this issue is really baked in for people across the country. We've had 3.5 years now of this administration's policies, which, by the way, when President Biden took office, almost his first day in office, he reversed 94 executive orders, actions taken by the previous administration dealing with the border. And that's what's led us to this. And I think people know that. What the Democrats are going to do tomorrow is clearly nothing more, in my view, than political theater. I mean, they're trying that. They understand this is political vulnerability for them. They want to get right on it. And I think they're trying to give some of their incumbents in particular some political cover on an issue that's incredibly important as an electoral issue going into the fall campaigns, and in one in which I think they're clearly on defense. So in my view, that's what it is, nothing more, nothing less, nothing else. And I think that's the way most of our members are treating it.
We were talking backstage about how things in Washington slow down quite a bit as we get into sometimes some people say silly season, some people say, you know, the politics before an election. We are 6 months out from the Senate GOP leadership elections. You're obviously running to succeed Mitch McConnell in that role. Talk to us a little bit about your plans this summer and beyond as you look to lock up the requisite votes, not only among your current colleagues, but I know you're also going to be on the road helping out some of those that are challenging Democrats.
Well, I mean, what's unusual about this leadership election is it started like 7 months before it usually does. You know, usually these issues are decided after the general election in November. But so we've got a big lead time, a big runway. And so you have an opportunity to meet with your colleagues. It is the quintessential inside Washington issue. It's a secret ballot election. And so you just have to make the best case that you can, make the argument to your colleagues. And obviously, we're going to be very active over the course of the next several months. Getting around the country, not only helping people, incumbents who are running for re-election, but also a lot of our challenger candidates out there. And as you know, we've got a great map and a great slate of candidates. But I always tell people that leadership elections, because they are secret ballots, when I first got to the Senate, there was an election for the job I now have, the whip job, between Lamar Alexander from Tennessee and Trent Lott from Mississippi. And I think Lamar, thought he had it won. And Lott eked out a victory there, and Lamar's great line, it was something to the effect that I wrote 27 thank you notes for 23 votes. And I think that kind of summarizes the secret ballot elections for leadership. So,
given our conversation later, we always at Punchbowl News say the leadership elections are our Super Bowl
right,
election.
Yes, yeah.
So we are covering it very, very closely.
Yes, you are.
You and you and former President Donald Trump have had a history of testy exchanges over the years. Talk a little bit about, can you work with him? Do you think, and we think about kind of what we cover, do you think he'll try to force you all to get rid of the filibuster?
I don't know what he does on that. You know, obviously in his last term as president, that was something that he pushed on quite hard at times to try and get the Senate to eliminate the filibuster. But our members are committed to preserving it. It is so essential. It's the essence of the Senate. It's what the founders had in mind. And frankly, if you change the filibuster, you not only change the Senate, but you change the country. And so in as much as we want to work with if President Trump is the next president, I think he's got a very good chance of being the next president, work with him on an agenda that's good for the American people. But we're going to have to do it the old-fashioned way and cobble together the types of majorities that enable us to get to the 60-vote threshold on most consequential legislation. Obviously, if we have a trifecta, House, Senate, and White House, we can do some things through budget reconciliation at 51 votes. But clearly, the majority of the Senate agenda is going to be done at 60.
So patience, because that's what the filibuster requires, and reconciliation, frankly.
Well, it does, and it's there for a reason. And of course, we don't like it when we want to do things quickly, and the Democrats clearly have already demonstrated a desire to eliminate it. And I think we need to be committed to preserving it because of what it means, not only to the Senate, but to the country.
All right, let's shift gears to the focus of the conversation, 5G and spectrum. The FCC spectrum authorization was extended until March 2023. We're obviously in 2024. It's been more than a year since the FCC could conduct any auctions. Why is this stalled?
No, I think, unfortunately, there are many cases disputes about when you have auctions, spectrum auctions, it's about how do you spend the proceeds. So that's one issue. The other issue is sharing it, how it gets allocated. And, there are disputes. Government sits on the majority of spectrum. A lot of it's defense. And obviously, national security is a priority. We all want to make sure that those issues are addressed. But we become increasingly efficient in how spectrum is used. And I think there are ways in which we can satisfy not only the needs that we have for national security, but also the needs we have for economic security. And if you think about how important it is that we get more commercially available spectrum available out there, we just got to move forward in a way that enables us to achieve both objectives. And I think we can do that. We had the conversation with some stakeholders last night on this very subject, and it is but we need to get it done. We need to get it done sooner rather than later because we need the pipeline, and we need mid-band spectrum for Wi-Fi, for 5G, 6G, and the only way you get it is to get the pipeline loaded.
You've been involved in an effort to get it reauthorized, co-authoring a bill with Senator Ted Cruz that would extend that auction authority. Talk a little bit about that bill. Where does it stand? Is this really a 2025 play at this point? Well,
the one thing that it does, and I hope we can get it moving, there have been a couple times now when a spectrum bill's been pulled from the markup because the bill they were putting up wasn't supported by any Republicans. And we have our own version, and I think the difference between the two versions is the bill that we've introduced provides certainty, and it creates clear and definitive timelines for making more spectrum available. And anything the Biden administration is doing right now doesn't address that, and the Democrat bill doesn't either. So we need a requirement. The last time I was chairman of the Senate Commerce Committee, we passed what's known as the Mobile Now bill, and that created a lot of mid-band spectrum, gave the FCC the authority to do it. Chairman Pai moved forward on that. And we had a huge auction. In fact, Verizon spent $52 billion on that auction alone. And we need that kind of authority again, and clear direction to do it. I mean, you can give them the authority, but you need to have clear guidelines and timelines in place. So that's the difference right now, and I hope we can bridge it because it is really critically important to our country to stay ahead. I mean, China continues to open up more and more of that mid-band spectrum. And if we aren't keeping up with them, we're going to lose the competition.
I want to talk about China in a little bit, but before that, so you said hopefully maybe before the election?
We'll see. I mean, it's going to take some coming together, meeting of the minds, but there are some, it's always about incentives, and I think if there's an alignment of incentives, and I hope there is, that we could get this done. If we don't, obviously, if we get the majority, we'll be hot on the trail early next year. But we can't really, frankly, wait that long. We need to try and get this done sooner.
I want to talk about the issue of net neutrality. It recently flared up again. Last month, you said this on the Senate floor. Like the Obama FCC before it, the Biden FCC wants to assert broad new government powers over the internet using rules that were designed for telephone monopolies during the Great Depression. And if there were ever a solution in search of a problem, this is it. What's the solution?
Well, I mean, I think everything was fine. This is a solution in search of a problem. we were the investment in this country when the heavy regulatory regime, the net neutrality regime that was in place under President Obama was removed and repealed. Investment picked up, capital investment was flowing. And if you look at how we survived the pandemic relative to other countries around the world, I think it was a tribute to the fact that we didn't have the heavy hand of government weighing down on that innovation and that investment. And so frankly, I don't understand why we had to go back to something that wasn't working. And in my view, really stymies investment. And you can clearly look at that if you look at the way that it impacted what was going on in the economy. It's not a necessary thing, and it creates all kinds of uncertainty. It creates questions about whether or not there might at some point be rate regulation. I mean, this is a broad authority. When you start treating the internet as a Title II monopoly under a statute that goes back almost 100 years, that is not keeping pace with what's happening in the real world. And I just think that was a big mistake. This FCC went back to rules that just make no sense for where we are today, and frankly, I think are going to be an impediment to the kind of investment we want to see.
I want to talk small business and the impact 5G can have. We always have to have a South Dakota, North Dakota moment in our conversations on stage. But I want to hear about what you're hearing from your constituents. Obviously, South Dakota has a lot of rural areas. Can you talk about places like Sioux Falls or other places where 5G can have that impact or having an impact on the economy?
It is. I mean, we're doing some remarkable things in South Dakota, and there are so many applications. Telehealth is one. We've got big rural areas, as you know, in the Dakotas, and during the pandemic, we discovered that there are a lot of ways in which we can serve, meet healthcare needs for people living in remote rural areas. So telehealth's a big deal. Precision agriculture, we're becoming more efficient, more productive, increasing the bushels per acre, increasing our yields. And that makes us more competitive in the global economy there as well. Obviously, distance learning. There's so many applications to just the build out of these networks, and we've seen enormous investment in our state of South Dakota. And in fact, there were days when you and I could go to certain parts of our state and get off the grid, and they can find you just about anywhere now. But that's a great tribute again to just the innovation, the investment we have in our economy. And the applications are very real. And Sioux Falls was one of the first cities of its size to get 5G. And there's a boom going on in South Dakota, and particularly in Sioux Falls. It's exploded, and people are moving there, businesses are moving there, creating good-paying jobs. That's good for the economy. And so these investments, and these are infrastructure investments, have lots of ramifications, most of which are beneficial. And clearly, those are a few examples that affect our states.
I want to zoom out from the local level to kind of U.S. leadership writ large on 5G and future technologies. You kind of alluded to this, but I want to kind of drill down on that a little bit in the sense of why does it matter for the U.S. to lead here?
I think we don't. If we don't lead, we're going to fall. We're already in great power competition with China, and they're a state-owned economy, and so they are investing heavily in areas like artificial intelligence. They're investing heavily in 5G, 6G technologies, and if we don't keep up, we're going to lose our place. And I think that American leadership and the way we do things in this country, which is to encourage, get the incentives out there, and the private sector, the market is remarkable in the way that it works. And I think you've seen that in spades just in the last few years in this sector of our economy. But if we don't do this, then in every sector of our economy, we'll fall behind. And you look at what's happened in Europe, for example, and some of the heavy-handed regulation that they've used. I'm a big believer in light touch. And I think there are, as these new technologies emerge and roll out, you want to see the private capital flow, and it allocates those resources way better than the government could. And that's why I think we win with China. But we can't get behind when it comes to issues like just creating more commercially available spectrum. And, whether that's on the Wi-Fi side or wireless mobile, 5G, 6G, this is a race, and it's a race we want to stay ahead in. And I would say the same thing about AI. I'm a big believer that we need to in artificial intelligence as well.
We'll talk about that. So, I mean, obviously, China is an issue where Republicans and Democrats have come together. But are there other countries where you think that the U.S. could be losing the arms race when it comes to telecom, when it comes to the technology arms race of the future?
Well, I mean, I think that obviously right now, the big competitor out there that we see on the world stage, and clearly a country that views its role as being not only a peer with the U.S., but dominant, is China. But I think there are other countries out there that are, they're finding their way to make the types of investments, whether these are state-owned economies, whether this is whether it's private investment. But I would argue that China, other areas of Asia that are exploding, they're going to see more and more investment in this space. And I think that it's going to become, and if you look at it from a national security standpoint, obviously it's China, it's Russia, it's North Korea, and it's Iran, the sort of axis of evil, and they're working together a lot. And I think this has national security implications, not only because of what it does in terms of the economic impacts. And we talk about foreign adversary technologies like TikTok in this country, and how that allows the Chinese to gather information and data on American citizens, but and also to use algorithms to manipulate the content that we see online. So these all have national security implications. Clearly, China is the main actor there, but I think we have to focus on the U.S. and doing everything we can to optimize our investment and growth and innovation and the creativity. This is a remarkable country built upon remarkable principles that have led to remarkable results. And I don't think we want to get away from that. I think that when you start looking at having government have a heavier hand, a bigger role, making more of those decisions, creating bureaucracies around it, it slows everything down, it stifles innovation. And as a consequence, I think it makes us less competitive globally, which I think we're poised to stay ahead of and to win, because I don't think China can keep up if we do the right things here. Part of which is creating more mid-band spectrum, and our bill creates 2,500 megahertz of that.
We are quickly running out of time, but we always like to project forward in these conversations, thinking about 5, 10 years from now. What do you think Congress can do when it comes to helping foster this kind of innovation, and when it comes to kind of thinking it's not just 5G, it's 6G, it's what's going to be in the future for us as a country?
I think part of it is, I would argue, and is staying out of the way. There are applications, for example, in AI, and I've got a bill with Amy Klobuchar and about a half a dozen other members of the Senate Commerce Committee that I think is sort of in my view at least, the right approach on artificial intelligence. It's a light touch, and we consulted a lot with the stakeholder community. We listened to the subject matter experts and came up with what I think is the correct approach to deal with a lot of these types of issues. But artificial intelligence has enormous upsides and potentials and benefits, but I also think there are some riskier applications, and that's why we have to have some general rules of the road and guardrails around it. And that's the way we're approaching the issue. Is the best way is to allow the market to innovate and capital to be allocated in an efficient way by the private economy, as opposed to having the government decide the winners and the losers. And I think that's the best approach to this. And I would argue that whether it's artificial intelligence or any emerging technology, that to me is the way that we want to proceed.
All right. Well, Senator Thune, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Great to be with you. Thanks, Anna. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Absolutely.